All right, let's get straight to it. Joining me today from Boca Raton is Sean Spicer, Communications Director for the Republican National Committee. Sean, it's good to have you here, and tonight's debate is going to be broken into 6 separate sections, moderated by Bob Schieffer, each focusing on a foreign policy hotspot. Now, we want to drill down on some of these with you right now, the contrast between the governor and the president. First, we want to start with Libya, because there's this new report out today from the Wall Street Journal that supports what the White House has said about the intelligence briefings given to the president that lean toward this spontaneous protest. And here's what Stephanie Cutter of the Obama campaign had to say about Libya today on Morning Joe.
Mitt Romney, on the day of that tragedy, when he came out and shot from the hip, and before he had any facts, blamed the United States, and blamed the president.
So, Sean, a President Romney would have presumably been given this same information. So how can he credibly claim his response would have been any different from that of President Obama's?
Well, what Governor Romney was responding to at the time, as you recall, that the embassy in Cairo had put out a statement talking about appeasement, and that the video and trying to the folks that were attacking the embassy in Cairo, it wasn't something that we condoned, and it was sort of apologizing for the video. That's what the governor was talking about then. I think there's a big difference between how the White House reacted to the terrorist act that occurred at the consulate in Benghazi, and that's a whole separate issue. The problem, Thomas, is the timeline that the White House is trying to discuss changes so often in terms of what they said and when they said it. And the president went to the UN 2 weeks after the attack in Benghazi and made it very clear 6 times that the incident there stemmed from a video. The UN ambassador, Susan Rice, was on all 5 of the Sunday talk shows the Sunday after the incident, attributing it all to a video, and White House Press Secretary Jay Carney did it. And now they're coming back and trying to rewrite history and say, well, we did call it an act of terror, and we knew all along, but then why did you comment the way you did for 2 weeks if you had that information? So I think that's where the timelines just doesn't add up.
When we talk about what's going to take place tonight, both the White House and Iran are disputing this report that appeared in the New York Times over the weekend that there are these bilateral talks planned for a post-election time period. Both the president and Governor Romney have said that military action is on the table as a last resort here, diplomacy first. Now, the governor favors sanctions, and Sean, as you know, the president has put the most crippling sanctions in history in place on Iran. So is there really a clear contrast between what the president has done and what Mitt Romney has said he would do if elected?
I think in this area, we're going to assume that the White House denials of these attempts to have one-on-one talks are false, because they're out there and deny them. I think we do need to move forward with the P5+1, work with our allies, make it a group effort to continue to put pressure on Iran. But we need to start seeing Iran walk backwards, not continuing to fight for more time, so that they're able to eventually, get this mission, get this weapon up. So we've got to continue to work with our allies under the P4+1 process.
Sean, as we talk about the issue of Afghanistan, which is likely to come up this evening as well, and we talk about what the Obama campaign is out with the new ad today, calling it a clear choice between the candidates on this topic. The president is apparently moving American troops out in 2014, keeping that timeline. If in 2014 generals were to talk to Mitt Romney about what he has called the president's, and chastise the president on what he called a timed retreat, Mitt Romney, though, supports moving out in 2014. Do you think, though, if Mitt Romney were to talk to generals in Afghanistan at that time period, that he would recalibrate his position on that or move those troops out?
Right. Well, the first part that the governor has sort of criticized is the notion of publicly announcing your timetable. I think that tells the enemy, and the folks in Afghanistan in a lot of these groups know how to play the long game, and so they say, okay, if that means we have to wait a year, we'll wait a year, we'll wait for you to get out. I think talking and exposing what your plan is, when you're going to withdraw, is not probably a policy that Mitt Romney would have pursued. That being said, to your question, I think he will continue to listen to the generals on the ground, and part of it isn't just listening to them, but figuring out what threats they are being posed to the United States and our national interests. So you don't just pull out because you've got a timeline. If the generals are coming to you telling you, hey, there's been a resurgence in one particular area, I think we need to address it, then I think that's something that as any commander-in-chief would sit down and say, okay, let's figure out, as opposed to keeping some notional timeline, how do we continue to protect America to the best of our ability?
But is it in our national interest to be an occupier?
That's correct, but it's also in our national interest to protect our nation, our people, and our allies.
But when we talk about staying in Afghanistan and talking about a timeline, do you think that in announcing a timeline that we've been able to reach the goals that were outlined of what we went to Afghanistan in the first place for?
Well, I think there's still a lot of work that has to be done in terms of training the Afghan forces to get to the place where they can assume responsibility for their own safety. Progress is being made in that front, and we're going to have to continue to see.
Sean Spicer with the RNC down in Boca for the debate, tonight, talking about this morning. Sean, thanks so much. Appreciate it. I want to bring in our Monday